Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session, beginning our journey through the tragedy of Philotas by Samuel Daniel. I don't know if that's how you're supposed to pronounce it or not. I'm sure the meter will tell us as we go. This is a play we're going to be doing over 2 sessions. We're slightly cramming it in a bit. It probably should go over sort of 2 to 3, but we're going to see how it lands with a relative minimum of discussion, though I'm sure we'll take more time if we need to. Reading today, Philotas and Metron, is...
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm looking forward to seeing how many times I can mispronounce my own name in this.
Excellent. Reading Antigona, Alexander, and Servus is...
Angela, I'm being an emperor and a whore.
It's a career. It's a career. Reading Cebalinus, Chorus, Clitus, and Perdiceas is...
Rachael, actor on the East Coast. That gig economy sounds rough now.
Reading Calisthenes, Messenger, Theus, Craterus, and Guard is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm everybody else.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will also be reading Ephestion, as I think the doubling gets a little bit too extreme at one point. But we shall see. It's a nice neoclassical work, so the doubling is usually not too difficult. We should be able to dance around perfectly happily. And so, without further ado, we're going to dive straight into Act 1, Scene 1. There's a lot of sort of interesting introductory bump, but I think we'll dive straight into the text itself. So, we have a scene with Philotas and Calisthenes. Chalisthenes, and Philotas is reading his father's letter.
Make thyself less Philotas than thou art. What means my father thus to write to me? Less than I am? In what? How can that be? Must I be then set underneath my heart? Shall I let go the hold I have of grace, gained with so hard adventure of my blood, and suffer others mount into my place, and from below look up to where I stood? Shall I degrade the opinion of my worth by putting off employment, as undone in spirit or grace, whilst other men set forth to get that start of action I have won? As if such men as I had any place to stay betwixt their ruin and their grace. Can any go beyond me, but they will go over me and trample on my state? Oh, and make their fortunes good upon my ill, whilst fear have power to wound me worse than hate.
Philotas, you deceive yourself in this. Your father means not you should yield in place, but your popular dependences, your entertainment, gifts, and public grace, that doth in just kings distaste the peers, and makes you not the greater, but in fears.
Alas, what popular dependencies do I retain? Can I shake off the zeal of such as do out of their kindnesses follow my fortunes in the commonweal?
Indeed, Philotas, therein you say true. They do follow your fortunes and not you.
Yea, but I find their love to me sincere.
Even as such as to the wolf the fox doth bear, that visits him but to partake his prey, and seeing his hopes deceived thus turns to betray.
I know they would, if I in danger stood, run unto me with hazard of their blood.
Yes, as like as men to burning houses run, not to lend aid, but to be lookers on.
But I with bounty and with gifts have tied their tarts so sure, I know they will not slide.
Bounty and gifts lose more than they do find. Where many look for good, few have their mind. Each thinks he merits more than that he hath, and so gifts laid for love do catch men wrath.
But many merely out of love attend.
Yea, those that love and have no other end. Think you that men can love you when they know that you have them not for friendship, but for show? And as you are engaged in your affairs and have your ends, think likewise they have theirs.
But I do truly from my heart affect virtue and worth to where I do find it set. Besides, my foes do force me in effect to make my party of opinion great, and I must arm me thus against their scorns. Men must be shod that go amongst the thorns.
Good Philotas, you yourself beguiled. 'Tis not the way to quench the fire with oil. The meek and humble lamb with small ado sucks his own dam. We see in others too. And in courts, men longest live and keep their ranks by taking injuries and giving thanks.
And is it so? Then never are these hairs like to attain that sober hue of grey. I cannot flatter and disguise the affairs in other colours than my heart doth lay, nor can I patiently endure this fond and strange proceeding of authority that hath engrossed up all into their hand by idle living feeble majesty, and impiously do labour all they can to make their king forget he is a man. Whilst they divide the spoils and pray for power, and none at all respect the public good, those hands that guard and get us what is ours, the soldiery engaged to vent their blood. In worst case seem then palace old man grown. I still can't get it right. In worst case seem then Pallas old grown moil, the Athenians fostered at their public cost. For these poor souls consumed with tedious toil remain neglected, having done their most, and nothing shall bring home of all these wars but empty age and bodies charged with scars.
Philotas, all this public care, I fear, is but some private touch of your dislike, who seeing your own designs not stand to square with your desires, no other's course is like. The grief you take things are not ordered well is that you feel yourself, I fear, not well. But when your fortunes shall stand parallel with those you envy now, all will be well. For you, great men, I see, are never more your end attained, the same that you were before. You, with a finger, can point out the stains of others' errors now, and now condemn the train of state, whilst your desire remains without. But once got in, you jump with them and interleague you with iniquity, and with a like neglect to temporize and only serve your own commodity. Your fortune then views things with other eyes, for either greatness doth transform the heart into other shapes of thoughts, or certainly this vulgar honesty doth dwell apart from power, and is some private quality, or rather those fair parts which we esteem in such as you are not the same they seem. You double with yourselves or else with us. And therefore now, Philotas, even as good to embrace the times as swell and do no good.
Alas, Chalisthenes, you have not laid true level to my nature, but are wide from what I am within. All you have said shall never make me of another side than that I am, and I do scorn to climb by shaking hands with this unworthy time.
The time, Philotas, then will break thy neck.
They dare not, friend. My father will keep my neck. My service to the state have cautioned so surely for mine honour, as it shall make good the place my deeds have purchased with danger, in the love and hearts of all.
Those services will seem as weights to charge, and press you unto death, if your foot fall never so little underneath your charge, and will be deemed done for your own avail, and who have spirits to do the greatest good may do most hurt if they remain not good.
Sorry, lost a freaking touch. They cannot want my service in the state.
These times want not men to supply the state.
I fear not whilst Parmenio's forces stand.
Water far off quenches not fire near hand. You may be fair dispatched ere he can hear, or if he heard before he could be here. And therefore do not build upon such sand. It will deceive your hopes when all is done. For though you were the minion of the land, if you break out, be sure you are undone. Where when running with the current of the state, were you the weakest man of men alive, and in conventions and in council state, then did sleep or nod, yet shall you thrive. These motive spirits are never fit to rise, and 'tis a danger to be held so wise.
What call you running with the state? Shall I combine with those that do abuse the state, whose want of judgment, wit, and honesty I am ashamed to see, and seeing hate?
Tush, Tush, my lord, think not of what we were fit. The world is governed more by form than wit. He that will fret at lords and that the reign is but a fool and grieves himself in vain. Cannot you great men suffer others to have part in rule, but must have all to do? Now, my good lord, conform you to the rest. Let not your wings be greater than your rest.
And exit Calisthenes.
See how these vain discoursive bookmen talk out of those shadows of their airy powers, and do not see how much that they must default of their accounts to make them greed with ours. They little know to what necessities our courses stand allied, or how we are engaged in reputation otherwise. To be ourselves in our particular, they think we can command our hearts to lie out of their place. And still they preach to us. Pack-bearing patience, that base property and silky gift of all the enduring ass. But let them talk their fill. It is but wind. I must sail by the compass of my mind.
And enter a messenger as a completely different person from who was speaking just now.
My lord, the king calls for you. Come, my lord, away.
And maybe the messenger exits. Who knows?
Well, then I know there's some new stratagem in hand to be consulted on today that I am sent for with such speed to him, whose youth and fortune cannot brook delay. But here's the suitor stands to impeach my haste. I would I had gone up with the privy way, whereby we escape the attending multitude. Though I confess that in humanity it is better to deny than to delude.
Enter Cebalinus.
My lord Philotas, I am come with news of great importance that concerns us all, and well hath my good fortune met with you, who best can hear and best discharge my care.
Say what it is, and pray thee, friend, be brief.
The case requires your patience, good my lord. Therefore I must crave your ear a while.
Oh, I cannot now be long from Alexander.
Nor Alexander will be long with us, unless you hear, and therefore know the news I bring, concerns his life. And this it is. There is one Dimenus here within the camp, whose low estate and high affections seem to have thrust him into outrageous ways. This man, affecting one Nicomachus, a youth, my brother, whom one day halloors into a temple, where, being both alone, he breaks out in this sort: Nicomachus, sweet lovely youth, should I not impart to thee the deepest secrets of my heart that hath no lock shut against thee, would let it out sometimes unawares of me. But as it issues from my faithful love, so close it up in thine and keep it fast. Swear to be secret, dear Nicomachus. Swear by the sacred Godhead of this place to keep my counsel, and I will reveal a matter of the greatest consequence that ever man imparted to his friend. Youth and desire, drawn with a love to know, sworn to be secret and to keep it close. Then Dimenus tells him that within 3 days there should be effected a conspiracy on Alexander's person by his means and diverse more of the nobility, to free their labors and redeem them home. Which when Nicomachus, my brother, heard, "Is this your tale?" saith he. "O God forbid mine oath should tie my tongue to keep in this ugly sin of treason, which to tell mine oath compels me. Faith against my faith must not be kept. My faithhood here is truth, and I must tell, friend or not, or friend not, friend or friend not, I'll tell." Dimenus, amazed, hearing beyond conceit this self-willed youth vow to reveal their plot, stand staring on him, drawing back his breath. Or else his breath, confounded with his thoughts, busied with death and horror, could not work, not having leisure now to think what was, but what would be. His fears were run before. and at misfortune ere she came to him. At length yet, when his reason had reduced his flying thoughts back to some certain stand, perceiving yet some distance was betwixt death and his fears, which gave him time to work, with his returning spirits he drew his sword, puts it to his own throat, then to my brother's throat, then lays it down, then wrings his hands, then kneels, then steadfast looks, then takes him in his arms, weeps on his neck, no word, but, "Oh, wilt thou be the destruction of us all?" And finding no relenting in the youth, his miseries grew furious, and again he takes his sword and swears to sacrifice to silence and their cause his dearest blood. The boy, amazed, seeing no other way, was fain to vow and promise secrecy, and as if wont allow and take that part, praise him tell who were his complices, which, though perplexed with grief for what was done, yet thinking now to have gained him to his side, Dymnus replies, no worse than Losaeus, Demetrius of the privy chamber, and Nicanor, Amintas, and Archilopis, Drosenus, Ophibetus, Luculaus, shall be the associates of Nicomachus. This when my brother once had understood, and after much ado had got away, he comes and tells me all the whole discourse, which here I have related unto you. And here will I attend to avouch the same, or bring my brother to confirm as much, whom now I left behind, lest the conspirators, seeing him here unusing to this place, suspecting to be impeached, might shift away.
Well, fellow, I have heard thy strange report, and will find time to acquaint the king therewith.
And they exit. Yes, you've got some really weird contractions going on in there. So, you know, to be a peach is to bub. To bu. Is all you get. And there's a lot. It seems to be a character trait that there seems to be slightly more in Cebalinus' speech. So there's a lot of it. So yeah, there's a dodgy chap about. Dimnus is doing some plotting, and Philotas has been told that. Philotas has also been told by his dad, dial it down a bit. We know you're a favourite of the king, but you know, maybe a bit much. Yeah, lots of stuff going on. Thoughts from the room about the play so far? First scene, Rachael, then Eric.
Just two things. The weird contractions in that speech, I wonder if it's not just to fit whatever meter this is, but also like that he's moving so fast through his words that he's slurring them a bit. And then, you know, Samuel Daniel also doing Cleopatra. Maybe it's because I knew who Cleopatra was that I was able to pick up the story and understand that and go into it more than this so far. You know, because he's kind of, I'm not familiar with these characters in the same way that I was with somebody like Cleopatra.
It is slightly harder to get into this, though. I'm liking the dialogue, and I think you're right. That it's a deliberate character thing. I think is that the way that language is structured there. It's not like everybody's doing it to the same sort of degree. There are people sort of tripping over bits and bobs, but it's nowhere near as pronounced as it was occasionally there. Eric.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like this one is actually ticking along quite nicely, which is kind of weird. Like I didn't expect that from, you know, usually with neoclassical stuff, things get like bogged down in long speeches and stuff and so on and so forth. But this one is very, I feel like it's very fast. I don't know, maybe that was just me. Or just the way it's written feels very human. And like sort of the exchange between Philotas and Chalisthenes is very sort of vivid.
Oh yeah, no, the dialogue feels like characters talking to each other rather than people speechifying at each other. I mean, there's something really good going on here. I think, but Rachel's got a good point. It is slightly harder to get straight into the action in that sense of not having that routine that a story like Cleopatra, where you've got sort of tent poles arranged everywhere. Is that what I mean? Anyway, other thoughts in the room before we go on. Rachel again.
Yeah, I should have phrased that as a question because I meant that as a question. Do other people in the room know who these characters are? Is this based off of is this a history or a myth or something like that I'm not picking up?
These are all people, or a reasonable percentage of them are real people. It is history. We are talking Alexander, of the greatness. I think, unless it's a different Alexander and I've totally got this muddled up, there's almost an overlap with not King Darius, the tragedy of Darius, and so there is a deliberate ordering system going on here. He lied, and yeah,
there is an overlap, isn't there? Isn't Antigona is Darius's ex, isn't she?
I've just put trusty Madam Wikipedia to it said Philotas. For an exposition scene, which the first scene nearly always is in plays, I was really grabbed by that first line. It hooked me from that very word go. Instead of being a sort of rambling first speech, it actually goes in fairly quickly. That be less than thyself, or whatever the dad says. When I looked at it very briefly, I thought, wow, that is a real hooker of a first line. And my God, if you're not awake in the audience, you're in trouble with that one.
Well, I mean, the first line tells you who the reader of the letter is. The second line tells you who the letter is from. So you've immediately got a relationship going on here. And very quickly it goes into exposition.
Those people still opening their sweets.
Yeah.
They've got problems. Let's be honest, there are those that miss the first 5 minutes.
But they do repeat each other's names later on in the scene as well. So if you miss their names the first time around, once you have settled down a bit, there is a bit of that. And, to a degree, I think there's just simply... I don't know how important the sort of dial it back a bit-ness here. I mean, it's thematically important, but I'm wondering how much of this data that we're getting in the opening, how much of this is going to turn out to be vitally important plot detail rather than just general relationship level detail. Whereas I think what comes later on with Cebalinus, that is plot. You need to know what's going on there. I think. I could be wrong. Let's gather more data. It's Act 1, Scene 2, and we've got Antigona and Thais.
What can a free estate afford me more than my incaptivated fortune doth allow? Was I beloved, enriched, and graced before? Am I not loved, enriched, and graced now?
Yea, but before thou wert a king's delight.
I might be his, but although he was not mine.
His greatness made thee greater in men's sight.
More great perhaps without, but not within. My love was then above me. I am now above my love. Darius then had thousands more. Philotas hath but me, as I do know, nor none else will he have, and so he swore.
Nay, then you may believe him if he swore. Alas, poor soul, she never came to know nor liberty nor lover's perjuries.
Stand I not better with a meaner love that is alone to me than with these powers, who out of all proportion must be above and have us as theirs, but they will not be ours? And Thais, although thou be a Grecian and I a Persian, do not envy me, that I embrace the only gallant man Persia or Greece or all the world can see. Thou, who art entertained and graced by all the flower of honour else, do not despise that unto me, poor captive, should befall so great a grace in such a worthy's eyes.
Antigona, I envy not thy love, but thinks thee blessed to enjoy him in that sort. But tell me truly, didst thou ever prove whether he loved in earnest or in sport?
Thais, let me a little glory in my grace. out of the passion of the joy I feel, and tell thee a secret. But in any case, as ye're a woman, do not it reveal. One day, as I was sitting all alone, in comes Philotas from a victory, all blood and dust, yet jolly, having won the glory of the day most gallantly, and warned with honour of his good success, relates to me the dangers he was in. Whereat I, wondering, blamed his forwardness. Faith, wench, says he, thus must we fight, toil, win, to make that young man proud. Thus is he born upon the wings of our deserts. Our blood sets him above himself and makes him scorn his own, his country, and the authors of his good. My father was the first that out from Greece showed him the way of Asia, set him on, and by his project raised the greatest piece of this proud work, which now he treads upon. Parmenio without Alexander much hath wrought. Without Parmenio, Alexander hath done naught. But let him use his fortune while he may. Times have their change. We must not still be led. And sweet Antigona, thou mayest one day yet bless the hour to have known Philotas' bed, wherewith he sweetly kissed me. And now deem that if that so great, so wife, so rare a man would, if he held me not in dear esteem, have uttered this to captive Persian. But Tyrus, I may no longer stay for fear my lord return and find me not within, whose eyes yet never saw me anywhere but in his chamber, where I should have been, and therefore, Tyrus, farewell.
And she exits.
Farewell, Antigona. Now have I that which I desired long, laid in my lap, but this fond woman here, and means to vent me of a secret wrong that doth my concern my reputation near. This gallant man whom this fool in this wise vants to be hers, I must confess to have loved, and bide to all the engines of these conquering eyes. Affections in his high-built heart to have moved, yet never could, for what my labour seeks, I see is lost upon vain ignorance, whilst he is, that is the glory of the Greeks, virtue's upholder, honour's countenance, out of this garnish of his worthy parts is fallen upon this foolish Persian. To whom his secrets gravely he imparts, which she as wisely keep and govern can. 'Tis strange to see the humour of these men, these great aspiring spirits that should be so wise. We women shall know all. For now and then, out of the humour of their jollities, the smoke of their ambition must have vent, and out it comes what wax should not reveal. For this her humour hath so much of wind that it will burst itself if too close pent. And none more fit than us their wisdoms find, who will for love of want conceal, who will for love of want or of wit conceal. For being the nature of great spirits to love, to be where they may be most eminent, and rating themselves so far above us in conceit, with whom they do frequent. Imagine how we wonder and esteem all that they do or say, which makes them strive to make our admiration more extreme, which they suppose they cannot, lest they give notice of their extreme and highest thoughts. And then the opinion that we love them too begets a confidence of secrecy, whereby whatever they intend to do, we shall be sure to know it presently. But faith, I scorn that one such as she, a silly, witty wench, should have this grace to be preferred and honored before me, having but only beauty and a face. I, that was ever courted by the great and gallant peers and princes of the East, whom Alexander in the greatest state the earth did ever see him, made his guest. There where this tongue obtained for her merit eternity of fame, where these hands did write in fire the glory of my spirit, and set a trophy that forever stands. Thy's action with the Grecian axe shall be enregistered alike. Thy's that she that fired the stateliest palace the earth ever did see. Darius' house that to the clouds aspired, she is put far back behind Antigona. But soon Philotas shall his error see, who thinks that beauty best, men's passions fits, for that they use our bodies, not our wits. And unto Craterus will I presently, and him acquaint with all this whole discourse, whom I am sure will take it well of us. For these great minions, who with envious eye look on each other's greatness, will be glad, in such a case of this importance, to have the advantage that here may be had.
And exit, enter the chorus, or maybe the chorus was always there. Stage directions are not exactly fulsome. Chorus, take it away.
We, as the chorus of the vulgar, stand spectators here to see these great men play their parts, both of obedience and command, and censure all they do and all they say. For though we be esteemed but ignorant, yet are we capable of truths, and know where they do well, and where their actions want the grace that makes them prove the best in show. And though we know not what they do within, where they attire their mysteries of state, yet know we by the events what plots have been, and how they all without do personate. We see who well a meaner part became, fail in a greater, and disgrace the same. We see some worthy of advancement deemed, save when they have it. Some again have got good reputation, and been well esteemed in place of greatness, which before were not. We see affliction act a better scene than prosperous fortune, which hath marred it clean. We see that all which we have praised in some have only been their fortune, not desert. Some war have graced, whom peace doth ill become, and lustful ease hath blemished all their part. We see Philotas acts his goodness ill, and makes his passions to report of him worse than he is. And we do fear he will bring his free nature to been trapped by them. For sure there is some engine closely laid against his grace and greatness with the king, and that unless his humours prove more staid, we soon shall see his utter ruining. And his affliction our compassion draws, which still looks on men's fortunes, not the cause.
I like this chorus. I like the opening gambit. We, as the chorus of the vulgar, we may not be, we may be esteemed ignorant, but you know what? We're not stupid. There's something really, really nice. They're sort of human. Sometimes the chorus isn't very human. They're sort of, and here is some poetry coming at you. There's something quite nice about that. I quite like. We've had several references to humours. Yes, you can tell we're in the early 17th century. People having humours as a character thing. Yes, we've been dancing around that a few times over the last month or so in various sessions, depending on when you're watching this video. So yeah, we've got some careless talk from Antigona there. Someone's been slagging off Alexander. Not a good plan. And saying it to someone who I think Eric managed to do the quite nicely too. There's court intrigue. There's lots of politicking going on. Beware how you're presenting yourself in this court. Beware who you talk to. What information is coming to where. Philotas has data that he's been given about a dodgy person. Theus has been given data about Philotas, and everyone's got dirt on each other. That's interesting. I'm liking this. Thoughts on the room? Rachael, then Eric.
I was just gonna say, the way the second, oh my gosh, I have to scroll to remember her name, because it's not Antigone, Antigona. The second she showed up, I remember how much I loved.
Thais. Thais. Thais.
No, the other the other character.
That was
Antigona, yeah.
Yeah. Thias too. The second they came in, I thought to myself that I remembered how much I like the way that he writes women, and maybe it's also that he seems to be playing with a more colloquial sound, and not going necessarily for this over poetical talk that we usually get in neoclassical stuff, because those contractions come up in Antigona's talk again, and it makes it seem like she's not over emphasizing her sounds, like they come together a little more, like it is she speaks very casually, and it brings a casualness to maybe an informality to the scene between her and Thias.
Eric?
Yeah, it felt, I don't know, like Thias felt a bit like at the beginning where she's like, yeah, whatever, you're beautiful, you'll be fine. It felt a bit like sort of a bit Mean Girls at the beginning, and then it just gets worse from there. Sort of like, oh yes, this pretty dame, I shall go and and sure, she's removed from the picture. It just, I don't know, just the way it's written feels very sort of like you get why she's plotting, and also kind of like you get as in the motivation for it, but also what I found interesting was the whole like, yeah, men use us for our bodies, they don't give a damn about like our wits. It feels very realistic, sort of, in terms of characterization.
Yeah, there's definitely a political intrigue going on, and people are there's different levels to these characters. They're doing different things. Other thoughts before we dive into Act 2? We're going to run Act 2 all the way through because it's not actually very long. Act 2, Scene 1, we have in the scene, I don't know if they all enter at the beginning, we have Alexander, Ephestion, oh, that's me, and Craterus.
Ephestion, thou doest Alexander love. Craterus, thou the king. Yet both you meet in one self-point of loyalty and love, and both I find like careful, like discreet. Therefore, my faithfulest counsellors, to you I must a weighty accident impart, which lies so heavy, as I tell you true, I find the burthen much to press my heart. Ingratitude and stubborn carriage is one of whom my love deserved respect, is that which moves my passion into rage, and is a thing I ought not to neglect. You see how I, Philotas, raised have above his rank, his peers, beyond his term. You see the place, the offices I give, as the earnest of my love to bind his firm. But all he deeming rather his deserts than the effects of my grace in any way, begins to play most peremptory parts, as fitter to control than to obey. And I have been informed, he fosters too the faction of that home-bent cowardice that would run back from glory and undo all the whole wonder of our enterprise. And one day to ourself presumes to write, seeming our style and title to abrade, which the oracles themselves held requisite, and which not I, but men on me have laid, and said he pitied those who under him should live, who held himself the son of Jupiter. Now, alas, good man, as though what breath could give could make mine own thoughts other than they are. I, that an arbiter betwixt my heart and their opinion, know how it stands within, and find that my infirmities take part of that same frailty other men live in. And yet, what if I were disposed to wink at the entertained opinion spread so far, and rather was content the world should think us other than we were, than what we are, think us other than we are, than what we are? In doing which, I know I am not gone beyond example, seeing that majesty needs all the props of admiration that may be got to bear it up on high, and much more mine, which but even now begun by miracles of fortune and our worth, needs all the compliments to rest upon that reverence and opinion can bring forth, which this wise man concedes not, and yet takes upon him to instruct us what to do. But these are but the flourishes he makes, of greater malice he is bent unto. For sure, methinks, I view within his face the map of change and innovation. I see his pride contented with no place, unless it be the throne I sit upon.
Had I not heard this from your sacred tongue, dear sovereign, I would never have believed Philotas' folly would have done that wrong. To his own worth and the honours he received, and yet methought of late his carriage in such exceeding pomp and gallantry, and such a world of followers did presage that he affected popularity, especially since for his service done he was adjudged to have the second place in honour with Antigonus, which won to some the opinion to be high in grace than his last action leading the right wing, and the overthrow he gave might hap enlarge the opinion of himself, considering the especial grace and honour of his charge, whereby perhaps in rating his own worth his pride might undervalue that great grace, from whence it grew, and that which put him forth, and made his honour suiting to the place. But yet I think he is not so unwise, although his fortune, youth, and jollity makes him thus mad, as he will enterprise aught against his course, his faith and loyalty. And therefore, if your grace did but withdraw those beams of favour which do daze his wits, he would be soon reduced to his rank of awe, and know himself, and bear him as befits.
Withdraw our grace? And how can that be done without some salivation to ensue? Can he be safe brought in, being so far gone? I hold it not. Say, Craterus, what think you?
Sovereign, I know the man. I find his spirit, and mouth shall not make me, I protest, speak other than I know his pride doth merit, and what I speak is for your interest, which long ere this I would have uttered, but that I feared your majesty would take that from some private grudge it rather bred than out of care for your dear sister's sake, or rather that I sought to cross your grace, or to confine your favour within bounds, and finding him to hold so high a place in that divine conceit which ours confounds, I thought the safest way to let it rest, in hope that time some passage open would, to let him those clear looks into that breast that doth but malice and confusion hold. And now I see you have discerned the man whom I protest I hold most dangerous, and that you ought, with all the speed you can, work to repress a spirit so mutinous. For even already he is swollen so high that his affections overflow the brim of his own powers, not able to deny passage unto the thoughts that govern him. For even now I heard a strange report of speeches that he should use his courtesan, vanting what he had done, and in what sort he laboured to advance that proud young man, so terming of your sacred majesty, with such other extravagant discourse, whereof we shall attain more certainty, I doubt not, shortly, and descry his course. Meanwhile, about your person, I advise your grace should call a more sufficient guard, and on his actions set such wary eyes as may thereof take special good regard, and note what persons chiefly he frequents, and who to him have the most free access, and how he bestows his time, where he presents the large revenue of his bounteousness, and for his wench that lies betwixt his arms, and knows his heart. I will about with her. Shall be wrought to apply her usual charms, and I will make her my discoverer.
This court counsel, Craterus, we do well allow, and give thee many thanks for thy great care. But yet we must bear fair, lest he should know that we suspect what his affections are. For that, you see, he holds a side of power, which might perhaps call up some mutiny. His father, old Parmenio, at this hour, rules Media with no lesser powers than I. Himself, you see, gallantly followed, holds next to us a special government. Cenas, that with his sister married, hath under him again commandment. Amintas and Simonus, his dear friends, with both their honourable offices. And then the private train that on them tends, with all particular dependencies, are motives to advise us how to deal.
Your grace says true, but yet these clouds of smoke vanish before the sun of that respect, whereon men's long inured affections look with such a native zeal, and so affect that as the vain and shallow practices of no such giddy traitor, if the thing be taken in time with true advisedness, shall the least show of any fearing bring.
Well, then to thee, dear Craterus, I refer the special care of this great business.
And they exit. I wasn't going to pause there, but I think it's quite important to pause there to take stock. Alexander, not keen on what's going on with Philotas here. And I thought at the beginning that he'd already heard what Theus was going to pass on, but no, that's what Craterus does towards the end of the scene. So he's just teed off with him just being a bit full of himself. And first bit of advice, from Ephestion. Drop your favour a little bit, he'll get in line. A decent bit of advice. Whereas we have more a surveillance suggestion. We'll watch him, make sure we pretend we still like him, so he doesn't suspect anything. So, this court's full of, who can you trust? Who can you trust in this court? Angela, sorry.
It's not actually Alexander.
Yeah. Alexander, what are your thoughts?
Now, I was just going to whiz back through the pages, but surely all these characters he's just named that are linked to Philotas are actually some of the rebels that are planning on a plot, aren't they?
Yeah.
Amintas, Simaneus, weren't these mentioned earlier?
I think there might be some trying to connect people with different people here. Yeah. Yeah. Intrigue, Eric.
I just like the fact that sort of Craterus goes, well, I wasn't going to say this, but since you mentioned it and, this guy was going to kill you and maybe, just a passing detail, I wasn't really going to say anything. I wasn't going to, stir shit about somebody else. And he has this huge buildup and then goes, but, you should do this.
These people know how to talk to a king. These aren't, people, telling the king what the king doesn't want to hear. That's for lesser messengers and counselors. So the following on from Angela's point earlier, the sort of rebelliousness, it's nascent. Remember, it's not happened yet. That Philotas has been told about. They are his friends, or they seem to be his friends. Now, they could be a lie. It could be just... no, it's Alexander saying it, so it can't be a lie. He wouldn't lie. He's too honourable. But yeah, he associates him with that. So that might be why Philotas sort of just went, I've heard thy strange report, and will find time to acquaint the king therewith. That he doesn't go into any detail about what he's going to do when Philotas heard that. So maybe there's a reason why he wouldn't do that, because they're his mates. Maybe there's that's why we didn't have a great soliloquy about what his plans were going to be. We don't know what his plans are going to be. I feel this is going to go very badly. There might be a clue in the title, but I feel maybe. Anyway, we should move on. To scene 2. Philotas, Cebalinus, or something like that, and Servus are on stage.
My lord, I here have long attendance made, expecting to be called to avouch my news.
In troth, my friend, I have not found the king at any leisure yet to hear the same.
No, not at leisure to prevent his death, and is the matter of no more import. I'll try another. Yet methinks such men as are the eyes and ears of princes should not weigh so light such an intelligence.
Exit Cebalinus.
My lord, the sum you willed me to give the captain that did visit you today, to tell you plain, your coffers yield it not.
How if they yield it not? Have I not then apparel, plates, jewels? Why sell them and go your way, dispatch and give it him.
Exit Servus, leaving Philotas alone.
Methinks I find the king much changed of late, and unto me his grace is not so great. Although they seem in show all of one rate, yet by the touch I find them counterfeit. For when I speak, although I have his ear, yet do I see his mind is otherwhere. And when he speaks to me, I see he strives to give a colour unto what is not. For he must think that we, whose dates, whose lives depend upon his grace, learn not by rote to observe his actions and to know his trim. And though indeed princes be manifold, yet have they still such eyes to wait on them, as are too piercing, that they can behold and penetrate the inwards of the heart, that no device can set so close a door betwixt their show and thoughts, but that their art of shadowing it makes it appear the more. But many, malicing my state of grace, I know no work with all the power they have upon that easy nature to displace my fortunes, and my actions to deprave. And though I know they seek to enclose him in, and fain would lock him up and chamber him, yet will I never stop and seek to win by my way by them that came not in by them, and scorn to stand on any other feet than these of mine own worth. And what my plain and open actions cannot fairly get, baseness and smoothing them shall never gain. And yet I know my presence and access clears all these mists which they have raised before, though with my back straight turns that happiness, and then again blow up as much or more. Thus do we roll the state of a stone of our own toil, and men suppose our hell a heaven the while.
And exit Act 2, Scene 3, Craterus again, and Antigona.
Antigona, there is no remedy. You needs must justify the speech you held with Thais, who will your conference verify, and therefore now it cannot be concealed.
Oh, my good lord, I pray you urge me not. Thais, only of a cunning envious wit, scorning a stranger, should have such a lot, hath out of her invention forged it.
Why then shall racks and tortures force thee show both this and other matters which we know? Think therefore, if it were not a wiser part to accept the rest rewards, preferment, grace, and being perhaps so beauteous as thou art, of fair election for a nearer place, to tell the truth than to be obstinate, and fall with the misfortune of a man, who in his dangerous and concussed state no good to thee, but ruin render can. Resolve thee of this choice, and let me know thy mind at full at my returning back.
Oh, what shall I do? Shall I betray my love, or die disgraced? What? Do I make a doubt? Betray my love? Oh, heavenly powers above, forbid that such a thought should issue out of this confused breast. Nay, rather first let tortures, death, and horror do their worst. But out, alas, this inconsiderate tongue, without my heart's consent and privity, hath done already this unwilling wrong, and now it is no wisdom to deny. No wisdom to deny. Yes, that tongue that thus hath been the traitor to my heart shall either powerfully redeem that wrong, or never more shall words of breath impart. Yet what can my denial profit him, whom they perhaps, whether I tell or not, are purposed upon matters known to them, to ruinate on some discovered plot. Let them do what they will. Let not thy heart seem to be accessory in a thought, to give the least advantage of thy part, to have a part of shame in what is wrought. Oh, this were well, if that my dangers could redeem his peril and his grace restore, for which I vow my life I render would, if this poor life could satisfy therefore. But 'tis not for thy honour to forsake thy love for death that loved thee in this sort. Alas, what notice will the world take of such respects in woman of my sort? This act may yet put on so fair a coat upon my foul profession as it may not blush to appear with those of cleanest note, and have as high a place with fame as they. What do I talk of fame? Do I not see this fashion of my flesh, my fears, my youth already entered, and have bent at me the joys of life to batter down my truth? Oh, my subdued thoughts, what have you done? To let in fear falsehood to my heart, whom though they have surprised, they have not won, for still my love shall hold the dearest part.
Antigona, what, are you yet resolved?
Resolved, my lord, to endure all misery.
And so be sure you shall, if that be your choice.
What will you have me do, my lord? I am content to say what you will have me say.
Then go with me to Alexander.
And they exit. Chorus time.
How dost thou wear and weary out thy days, restless ambition never at an end, whose travels no Herculean pillar stays, but still beyond thy rest thy labors tend? Above good fortune thou thy hopes dost raise, still climbing, and yet never canst ascend. For when thou hast attained unto the top of thy desires, thou hast not yet got up. That height of fortune either is controlled by some more powerful overlooking eye, that doth the fullness of thy grace withhold, or counterchecked with some concurrency, that it doth cost far more ado to hold the height attained than was to get so high. Where stand thou canst not, but with careful toil, nor lose thy hold without thy utter spoil. There dost thou struggle with thine own distrust and others' jealousies, their counterplot against some underworking pride that must supplanted be, or else thou standest not. There wrong is played with wrong, and he that thrust down others comes himself to have that lot. The same concursion doth afflict his breast that others shook. Oppression is oppressed, that either happiness dwells not so high, or else above, whereto pride cannot rise, and that the highest of man's felicity but in the region of affliction lies, and that we climb but up to misery. High fortunes are but high calamities. It is not in that sphere where peace doth move. Rest dwells below it, happiness above. For in this height of fortune are inbred those thundering fraggers that affright the earth. From thence have all distemperatures their head, that brings forth desolation, famine, dearth. There certain order is disordered, and there it is confusion hath her birth. It is that height of fortune doth undo both her own quietness and others too.
And exit the chorus and end Act 2. Oh, we've got a torture scene. Confess. It's not quite torture, but it's interrogation. I like interrogation scenes. Content to say what you will have me say. There's some really interesting stuff going on there. I quite like the little scene as well. Cebalinus just turning up, just going, "So what have you done?" Nothing. Right. Okay. I'm gonna tell me news. I thought you were a good okay, no, you're not going to do anything. And then Servus turns up and says, you're overspending. Your credit card's just been refused. Just go on eBay and sell some stuff. And yeah, so all sorts of things not going well here. And, if we're going with tragic flaw territory here, he set himself up. His loose lips, overspending. He's not a sensible guy. Not a sensible guy. Thoughts on the room before we dive into Act 3?
Yeah, it was interesting because we said, how much weight had that first line got for the play. And actually, but in that scene, I was going, quite a lot then. He's, the king stopped listening to him. And, you suddenly realise, actually, if you weren't awake in that first scene, you've got problems because actually, not that it's essential, but it's nice. It links very well through that scene. But yeah, no, you're right. It's, excuse the phrase, but it's spot the stiff almost with Philotas. You do get the feeling you're going to be, he might not come to a very happy end by the end of this play.
Yeah. I don't think, it depends who gets him first, the bailiffs or, the king or somebody else. I mean, basically everyone's kind of gunning for him. And his one person, he had someone who was came to him earlier with news, will you help me deal with this? He sort of alienated him. His mistress Antigona has basically been turned against him by force of outside pressure. Nobody's on his side at the moment. Rachael.
No, I was going to say I was a little lost in the beginning, but Cebalinus coming back in that last scene really nails it home. Like, it's like Samuel Daniels' way, like, if you missed it, by the way, I'm just hammering it home, what side that Philotas might really be on, that he's not said anything to the king and not made any time, and that rumors have been able to reach the king quicker than actual intel from this guy. It's a nice little unsaid structure that he's just added, a little unspoken dynamic he's just added into the play.
Well, it also sets up a sort of irony here that because that his reputation's a little low, he's not able to see the king. The king can't hear the. It's not that he didn't want to go to the king. He can't. The king won't see him. Which then tees off this Seb, and Phil's left alone to soliloquize. It's nicely complex. I'm liking this. Eric.
Doesn't he basically say that, I talk to the king, but he's not really listening because he's got other stuff on his mind? Or is that not literal and sort of more like he just can't, he's just too busy kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, it could also be part of his pride thing. He's just, enjoying his party, as it were. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we go into Act 3? With the wonderfully titled Metron. If it doesn't turn out to be one of a transformer, I'll be very disappointed. Eric.
I know, right? I was just going to say that the scene between Craterus and Antigona is actually very interesting because he basically goes, I know you didn't do it, but you have to say that you did it, kind of thing, which is kind of...
He's trying to turn the witness. He's saying, "Well, we've already got someone who's put you in for the. You've got to testify, otherwise we're going to press charges." It's that kind of thing. He's trying to flip a witness.
Yeah. So weird. And kind of like I thought he was going to go meet Zeus, but apparently not. That scene does not happen on stage.
Yeah. Right. Let's dive into Act 3. Lots of people on stage. Alexandra, Metron, Cebalinus, Craterus, Perdiceas, Ephestion, plus a guard. All sorts of people are on stage. This is great.
Come, Metron, say, of whom hast thou received intelligence of this conspiracy, contrived against our person, as thou sayest, by Dimnus and some other of the camp? Is not some vain report born without cause? That envy or imagination draws from private ends to breed a public fear, to muse the world with things that never were?
Here, may it please your highness, is the man, one Cebalinus that brought me the news.
O Alexander, I have saved thy life. I am the man that have revealed their plot.
And how camest thou to be informed thereof?
By mine own brother, one Nicomachus, whom Dimnus, chief of the conspirators, acquainted with the whole of their intents.
How long since is it this was told to thee?
About some 3 days, my sovereign lord.
What? 3 days since, and hast thou so long kept the thing concealed from us, being of that weight? Guard, take and lay him presently in hold.
Oh, may it please your grace, I did not keep the thing concealed 1 hour, but presently ran to acquaint Philotas therewithal, supposing him a man, so near in place, would best respect a case that touched so near, and on him that I waited these 2 days, expecting to have been brought unto your grace, and seeing him weigh it light, pretending that your grace's leisure served not fit to hear, I to the master of your armory addressed myself forthwith to Metron here, who, without making any more delay, pressed in unto your grace, being in your bath, locked me up the while in the armory, and all what I could show revealed hath.
Well, if this be so, then, fellow, I confess thy loyal care of us was more than theirs, who had more reason theirs should have been more. Cause Dimnus to be presently brought forth, and call Philotas straight, who now I see hath not deceived me in deceiving me, who would have thought one whom I held so near would from my safety have been so far off, when most it should and ought import his care, and wherein his allegiance might make proof of those effects my favours had deserved, and ought to have claimed more duty at his hands than any of the rest. But thus we are served, when private grace out of proportion stands, and that we call up men from off below, from the element of baser property, and set them where they may behold and know the way of might and work of majesty, where seeing those rays, which being sent far off, reflect a heat of wonder and respect, to sail near hand, and not to show that proof, the object only working that effect, think, seeing themselves, though by our favour, set within the same self-orb of rule with us. Their light would shine alone if ours were set, and so presume to obscure or shadow us. But he shall know, although his nearness hath not felt our heat, that we can burn him too. And grace that shines can kindle into wrath, and Alexander and the king are two. But here they bring us Dimnus, in whose faith I see is guilt, despair, horror, and death.
Enter a guard with Dimnus' body.
Yea, death indeed, for ere he could be attached, he stabbed himself so deadly to the heart as 'tis impossible that he should live.
Say, Dimnus, what have I deserved of thee that thou should think worthier to be thy king, Philotas, than ourself? Hold, he sinks. Guard, keep him up. Get him to answer us.
He hath spoke his last. He'll never answer no more.
Sorry I am for that. For now hath death shut us clean out from knowing him within, and locked up in his breast all the others' hearts. But yet this deed argues the truth in gross, though we be barred in it particular.
Enter Philotas.
Philotas, are you come? Look here, this man, this Cebalinus, should have suffered death, could it but have been proved he had concealed the intended treason from us these 2 days. wherewith, he says, he straight acquainted thee. Think, the more near thou art about ourself, the greater is the shame of thine offence, and which hath been less foul in him than thee.
Renowned prince, for that my heart is clear, amazement cannot overcast my face, and I must boldly, with all the assured cheer of my unguilty conscience, tell your grace that this offence thus happening was not made by any the least thought of ill in me, and that the keeping of it unbewrayed was thus that I held the rumour vain to be, considering some who were accused were known your ancient and most loyal servitors, and such as rather would let out their own heart blood, I know, than once endanger yours, and for me then upon no certain note, but on the brabble of two wanton youths, to have told an idle tale that would have wrought in you distrust and wronged others' truths, and to no end, but only to have made myself a scorn and odious unto all. For which I rather took the bait was laid than else for any treachery at all. I must confess I thought the safest way to smother it a while, to the end I might, if such a thing could be, some proofs bewray that might yield probability of right. Protesting that mine own unspotted thought a little belief of others' truth did breed, judging no impious wretch could have been wrought to imagine such detestable deed. And therefore, O dread sovereign, do not weigh Philotas' faith by this his oversight, but by his actions past, and only lay error to his charge, not malice or despite.
Well, lo, thou hast a favourable judge, when, though thou hast not power to clear thy blame, yet hath he power to pardon thee the same, which take not as thy right, but as his grace, since here the person alters not the case. And here, Philotas, I forgive the offence, and to confirm the same, lo, here's my hand.
O sacred hand, the witness of my life, by thee I hold my safety as secure as is my conscience free from treachery.
Well, go to your charge and look to our affairs, for we tomorrow purpose to remove. In troth, I know not what to judge herein. Methinks that man seems surely clear in this, however otherwise his hopes have been, transported by his unadvisedness. It cannot be. A guilty conscience should put on so sure a brow, or else by art his looks stand neutral, seeming not to hold respondency of interest with his heart. Sure, for my part, he hath dissolved the knot of my suspicion with so clear a hand as that, I think in this, whatever plot of mischief it may be, he hath no hand.
My lord, the greater confidence he shows, who is suspected should be feared the more, for danger from weak natures never grows. Who must disturb the world are built therefore. He more is to be feared than that nothing fears, and malice most affects that least appears. Presumption of men's powers as well may breed assuredness, as innocency may. And mischief seldom but by trust doth speed. Who kings betray, first their belief betray. I would your grace had first conferred with us, since you would need such clemency have shown, that we might yet have advised you thus, that he his danger might never have known. In faults wherein an after flame will live, 'tis better to conceal than to forgive. For who are brought unto the block of death, think rather on the peril they have passed, rather than on the grace which hath preserved their breath. And more their sufferings than their mercy taste. He now to plot your danger still may lift, but you his guilt not always to forgive. Know that a man so swollen with discontent, he no grace can cure, nor pardon can restore. He knows how those who once hath mercy spent can never hope to have it any more. But say that though through remorse he calmer prove, will great Parmenio, so attended on with that brave army fostered in his love, be thankful for his grace you do his son? Some benefits are odious, So is this, where men are still ashamed to confess to have so done, as to deserve to die, and ever do desire that men should guess they had rather received an injury than life, since life, they know, in such case, may be restored to all, but not to grace.
And for my part, my liege, I hold to this mind, that sure he would not have so much suppressed the notice of a treason in that kind, unless he were a party with the rest. Can it be thought that great Parmenio's son, the general commander of the horse, the minion of the camp, the only one of secret counsel and of free recourse, should not in 3 days' space have found the king at leisure to hear 3 words of that import, whilst he himself in idle lavishing did thousands spend to advance his own report?
And if he gave no credit to the youth, why did he do 2 days' space delay him then, as if he had believed it for a truth, to hinder his address to other men? If he had held it but a vain conceit, I pray, why had he not dismissed him straight? Men in their private dangers may be stout, but in the occasions and fears of kings, we ought not to be credulous, but doubt the intimation of the vainest things.
Well, howsoever, we will yet this night disport and banquet in unusual wise, that it may seem we weigh this practice light, however heavy here within it lies. Kings may not know distrust, and though they fear, they must not take acquaintance of their fear. You're muted, Rob.
I'll
Muted.
do all that again. There we are. There we are. That was lovely. So yeah, it's all kicking off now, isn't it? Yeah. Dimnus, rebellion stuff. Who told you about this thing? And Metron said it was this guy, and he said, well, why didn't you tell me earlier? And well, I tried. You waited. Why 3 days? I could have been dead by now. Several times over. So he's dragged off. And it's not my fault. It was the other guy. And yeah, so Dimnus is dead. Philotas is not in a good place. Not in a good place. And I loved, and Angela read it really nicely, Alexandra's line, I can pardon you. Take not as thy right, but as his grace. It's like your pride. You're sort of expecting I'm going to pardon you because you think you're great. You know what? No, it's me. It's me. I'm the guy. And then you think it's all sorted, everything's settled, and then Craterus does his little worm tongue act and just turns everyone against him. You've got some random people. He's a good family. He's of a good family. He's he wouldn't do this. But why did he wait? Why did he wait? Yeah. Alexander says, yeah, let's pretend everything's normal. We'll go and have a banquet because that's fun. That's fun. Thoughts from the room. It's all. Ooh. It's the West Wing meets, House of Cards. It's, it's all those things. Angela, then Eric.
Thing is, that was an awfully long time to not say anything.
Yeah.
So I have to say, I'm astonished that Alexander would have let him go, because you just think that was shameful to have done that. And he didn't even think about it. He hasn't said, I don't believe you, to the messenger. And he hasn't, said, I don't believe you when he met him later either. And then he only talked about himself and how he wasn't properly being, kind of like getting the ear of the king. So he does kind of, well, I mean, I'm not saying he deserves it, but there's a lot told about Alexander and what he did to people. So, I mean, I can see that something's going to go very, very badly wrong later. But it's clear that he's just so full of himself that he's completely failed to spot anything, isn't he? So he literally does have a major flaw in his character, doesn't he?
This is a massive failure of intelligence gathering. It has not gone well. Who's next? I thought I saw more than one. Eric.
Yeah, he seemed a bit naive. That's what I found weird. And then it's like, oh yes, I will forgive you, my friend, for a while. And like Craterus comes in going, you know that he's gonna kill you, right? if you pardon him again and again. It just kind of
Yeah.
And if it's not him, it's gonna be somebody else. Kind of, I don't know, it just kind of it doesn't have the paranoia that you would expect from Alexander. Then again, I guess like maybe it comes in later. So yeah, but it's interesting to think of.
Was he paranoid? He says here that he shouldn't be afraid of his fears.
Well, I guess he didn't reach like Caligula levels, but like
Well, he is responding to an attempt to murder him. So you know he's not paranoid if they're all out to get him. Angela, you were muted if you said something terribly witty there.
I know, I was trying not to interrupt. I just went, they are.
They are, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, let's complete the act. We've got a few scenes to go. Let's see if they run into each other. Act 3, Scene 2, Antigona and Thais.
You're a secret council keeper, Thais. In truth, I little thought you such a one.
And why, Antigona? What have I done?
You know full well your conscience you beraise.
Alas, good soul, would you have me conceal that which you yourself could not but needs reveal? Think you another can be more to you in what concerns them not than you can be whom imports? Will others hold them true and you prove false to your own secrecy? But yet this is no wonder, for we see wiser than we do lay their heads to gauge for riotous expenses of their tongues, although it be a property belongs especially to us, and every age can show strange precedents what we have been in cafes of the greatest plots of men. And 'tis a scene on this world's stage we play, whose revolution we with men convert, and are to act our part as well as they. Though commonly the weakest, yet apart for this great motion of a state we see doth turn on many wheels, and some, though small, do yet the greater move, who in degree stir those who likewise turn the greatest of all. For though we are not wise, we see the wise by us are made, and make us parties still in actions of the greatest qualities that they can manage, be they good or ill.
I cannot tell. But you have made me do that which must evermore afflict my heart. And if this be my woeful part, t'undo my dearest love, would I have had no part. How have I, silly woman, sifted been, examined, tried, flattered, terrified by Craterus, the cunningest of men, that never left me till I had descried whatever of Philotas I had known.
What, is that all? Perhaps I thereby have done thee more good than thou canst apprehend.
Such good I rather you should get than I, if that can be a good excuse, my friend.
Alas, thy accusation did but quote the margin of some text of greater note.
But that is more than thou or I can tell.
Yes, Antigona, I know it well. For be thou sure that always those who seek to attack the line, so provide that still their toils be such as that he shall not escape to turn his rage on those that wrought his ill. Philotas neither was so strong nor high, but malice overlooked him and descried where he lay weak, where was his vanity, and built her countermounts upon that side in such sort as they would to be sure to race his fortunes with the engines of disgrace. And now mayest thou, perhaps, come great hereby, and gracious with his greatest enemy, for such men think they have no full success until they likewise gain the mistresses of those they master, and succeed the place and fortunes of their loves with equal grace.
Loves, out alas, loves such a one as he, that seeks to undo my love, and in him me.
Tosh, love his fortunes, love his state, his place, whatever greatness doth, it must have grace.
I weigh not greatness, I must please mine eye.
Thy nothing fairer sees than dignity.
But what is dignity without our love?
If we have that, we cannot want our love.
Why, that gives but the outside of delight, the daytime joy. What comfort hath the night?
If power not procure that, what can it do?
I know not how that can be attained to, unto.
Nor will I teach thee if thou knowest it not. 'Tis vain, I see, to learn an Asian wit.
Exit this.
If this be that great wit, that learned skill you Greeks profess, let me be foolish still, so I be faithful. And now, being here alone, let me record the heavy notes of moan.
And we can assume some kind of song occurs here. Sing song. Act 3, Scene 3. Craterus, boo hiss, Ephestion, Clitus, etc. So, stand by.
My lords, you see the flexible conceit of our endangered sovereign, and you know how much his peril and Philotas' pride imports the state in us, and therefore now we either must oppose against his seat or be undone. For now hath time descried an open passage to his farthest ends, from whence, if negligence now put us back, return we never can without our wrack. And, good my lords, since you conceive as much, and that we land alike make not me prosecute that cause alone, as if it did but touch only myself, and that I did both breed and urge these doubts out of private grief. Indeed, I know that I might with much more ease sit still like others, and if dangers come, might think to shift for one as well as they. But yet the faith, the duty, the respect we owe both to our sovereign and the state, my lords, I hold requires another care.
My lord, assure you we will take a time to urge a stricter count of Dimnus' death.
My lords, I say, unless this be the time, you will apply your physic after death. You see the king hath invited us this night to Philotas with the rest, and entertains him as a kind and usage to our sight as ever. And you see the cunning strains of sweet insinuation that are used to assure the ear of grace with false reports, so that all this will come to be excused with one remove. One action quite transports the king's affections over to his hopes, and sets him so beyond the true regard of his own safety, as one enterprise may sever their turn, and may us all surprise.
But now, since things thus of themselves break out, we have advantage to prevent the word, and every day will yield us more, no doubt. For they are saved, that thus are warned first.
So, my lord Clitus, are they likewise warned to accelerate their plot, being thus bewrayed?
But that they cannot now, it is too late. For treason taken ere the birth doth come abortive, and her womb is made her tomb.
You do not know how far it hath put forth the force of malice, nor how far is spread already the contagion of this ill.
Why then there may be someone be tortured of those whom Cebalinus hath revealed, whereby the rest may be discovered.
That one must be Philotas, from whose head all this corruption flows. Take him, take all.
Philotas is not named, and therefore may perhaps not be acquainted with this plot.
That his concealing of the plot bewrays, and if we do not cast to find him first, his wit, be sure, laid so good a ground as he will be the lost that will be found.
But if he be not found, then in this case we do him more by injuring his grace.
If that he be not found to have dealt with this, yet this will force some other thoughts of his, as will undo him, for you seldom see such men arraigned that ever quitted be.
Well, my lord Craterus, we will move his grace, though it be late, before he take his rest, and that some course may be taken in this case, and God ordain it may be for the best. And they exit, and the chorus enters and speaks some words.
See how these great men clothe their private hate in those fair colors of the public good, and to effect their ends pretend the state as if the state by their affections stood, and armed with power and princes' jealousies, will put the least conceit of discontent into the greatest rank of treacheries, that no one action shall seem innocent. Yea, valor, honor, bounty shall be made as accessories unto ends unjust, and even the service of the state must lade the needfulest undertakings with distrust, so that base vileness, idle luxury seem safer far than to do worthily. Suspicion full of eyes and full of ears doth thorough the tincture of her own conceit, see all things in the colors of her fears, and truth itself must look like to deceit, that what way sever the suspected take, still envy will most cunningly forelay the ambush of their ruin, or will make their humors of themselves to take that way. But this is still the fate of those that are by nature or their fortunes eminent, who either carried in conceit too far, do work their own or others' discontent, or else are deemed fit to be suppressed. Not for they are, but that they may be ill, since states have ever had far more unrest by spirits of worth than men of meaner skill, and find that those do always better prove, war equal to employment, not above. For self-opinion would be seen more wise than present counsels, customs, orders, laws, and to the end to have them otherwise, the commonwealth into combustion draws, as if ordained to embroil the world with wit, as well as grossness, to dishonor it.
Oh, there's some really good stuff in here. I'm really liking this. No one action shall seem innocent. Even the service of the state must lay the needfulest undertakings with distrust. This feels awfully modern to me. It's very sort of war on terror. It does feel like, and anything can be used against you. We don't know how far the treason runs, people. We don't know how far this goes. So let's just arrest him regardless of stuff. What's the case against him? Well, he didn't tell. He didn't tell straight away, so he must be part of the plot. It's sort of interesting stoking of paranoia. Ephestion's just sort of going, right, we'll take our time, and he's going, no, bomb in the room. There's a bomb in the room. You've got to deal with it now. Fascinating. And then Antigona and Theus just having, shall we say, a post-mortem of their friendship. You blabbed. Well, you blabbed first. You blabbed. You shouldn't have blabbed to me if you didn't expect me to blab to somebody else. Yeah. Your testimony didn't make that much of a difference. It was a minor thing. It's fine. Yeah, thoughts in the room. Lots of stuff going on here. Eric.
Yeah, Titus, I think it's the second speech in that scene, just reads very like a politician kind of thing, like sort of, yeah, well, you didn't, it's like so dense, it kind of doesn't really make sense of it at some point. I can't remember where it was, but there was a part where I was like, what on earth am I talking about at this point? It just felt so sort of weird, I don't know. And then the last comment about like what's it called? I see there's no way to understand Asian minds or something like that. That was a weird line.
Well, there does seem to be a something between the different peoples here. So we've got you Greeks as well. So there does seem to be various peoples in play in the court here as well. That might dig deeper into the way it all holds together. It may not. Rachael.
Yeah, I think Antigona is. I think she's. Yeah, Angela just put it in the chat. She's Persian because wasn't she Darius's wife or something? The other thing that I meant to say was I've completely forgotten it.
That's all right. That's fine. Yes. So we've got people flinging insults at each other in various different ways. Slights, manipulations. Eric.
Yeah, the other line that struck me as very modern was the bit where Antigona goes, "Why that gives the outside of delight, the daytime joy, what comfort hath the night?" And then Thais goes, "If power procure not that, what can it do?" It felt very House of Cards. It just was like, well, if you have all the power, you can have anyone you want.
Yeah. But yeah, the sort of manipulation of earlier in the act, we had the manipulation by Craterus of Alexander directly, and then we have more the sort of lower level select committee manipulation. So he's working on all the angles, Rachael, then Eric.
I was gonna bring up the choruses. They have something. They built this suspense, and they kind of build the some subtext for this. I think that people are. There's eyes and ears everywhere. Everybody's spying on everybody. Everybody's trying to climb over each other. And pride and stuff. And there's some religious angle to it, and there's some state angle to it. And then about Philotas, Thais is her name. That little bit, that angle. I wonder if it's that thing that we get in some other early modern plays where it's what is it, the Wars of Cyrus and some other of these types of plays that there's this idea that we got it in that Darius one too, where the leaders it's either they can be these great generals or they can be lovers, and they can't be both, and that if they become a lover, they're not going to be as good of an army man anymore. Maybe that fits partially into the psychology of what is supposed to be happening with Philotas, that he's kind of abandoning his duties or neglecting them or not being as on it as he should because he's in full-on lover mode and he's just become lavish like a courtier.
I mean, that would fit in with Daniel's earlier Cleopatra as well. There might be elements in there because that's one of the ways that story is framed with Antony and Cleopatra. So yeah, that might be an element there. Yeah. Eric.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the sort of Craterus speech because at the beginning you think, okay, this guy might be a bit, he's a bit protective, whatever. He's one of the trusted counselors. Okay. But then he has this line in the middle of this where he goes, it wasn't just I'm not prosecuting the cause by myself and urging these doubts out of a private grief. And then he keeps going with his accusation about Philotas. And I'm like, that doesn't ring true, dude. Just sort of feels very... I'm not saying that he's someone who stole my girlfriend or whatever his beef is with Philotas, but please kill him, something like that. It just feels very very much like.
Yeah. Angela.
Do we actually know what his beef is?
Not explicitly, no. I don't think he hasn't turned to the audience and goes, "Well, when I was 5, he stole my pocket money." No, he hasn't done anything like that, or given us any particular sort of. There's sort of hints and suggestions, but I don't think we've been given a motive at all. I think it's just court politics. He's in the way. Because if you push him down, you will go up. Because you end up with the officers that he might have held. And he's obviously a very easy target because everybody's gunning for him. So, he's painted a big sign on his back and covered it in jewels.
His dad did tell him at the beginning.
Yeah.
He did tell him.
Yeah. I want at the end his dad to turn up and just go, "I told you so." That's how I want it to end. I just want his dad to turn up and just go, "Well, should listen to me. Not doing anything about it now." Right, anyway, we're approaching extra time. Final thoughts on the room. These first 3 acts, they've landed quite well. I always like a play that seems to have a relatively small cast. It does and it doesn't. It's slightly more fiddly than you'd think. But I like a relatively small cast and quite a nice focus to it. And yeah, I'm liking the politics. But yeah, still 2 acts to go. Still a reasonable chunk of text to go. Thoughts in the room. Greg, how are you finding the play so far?
I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward.
We are allowed to enjoy the plays.
Yes. Yeah, I know, but unfortunately, I missed Cleopatra. It was one I was a bit peeved I missed. I like the intrigue. I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm really hoping that we're all entirely wrong and that I shan't be imparting. We're all doomed from Dad's Army again on Thursday, but I have a nasty suspicion we are, having read Wikipedia on this guy. I guess I suspect the dad, if the dad doesn't turn up, somebody will and say, "Yeah, you should have listened."
Yeah.
Very interesting. And actually, for a change, I find it a bit like the West Wing, actually. Really strong female parts, which is nice. You don't always get them in these in this style of play, I find. The women are either underwritten or not there. So it's nice to have a good, up the women, so to speak.
Yes, wonderfully phrased there, Greg. Angela, any final thoughts?
Yes, we'll follow that, as they say. Well, I'm enjoying it. So as a play, I'm really enjoying it. As a historian, I'm inevitably thinking, when was this produced? Because it's quite dodgy from a political point of view when you think that you're producing this in a monarchy that is just about to change. You've got a very old queen, you've got a brand new king, much disliked, and it's about treachery and so on. So it made me think of the Earl of Essex, who is, actually does get above himself and is executed and so on. So, no, I'm sorry. I'm a historian. What can I say?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should say that, but there's more to come next session on these things. Pretty much bang on all counts there. So...
Worthy of my PhD.
There's a lot going on here that may or may not be deliberate, Your Honour. Eric, any final thoughts?
Yeah, it just there was a part of me going at some point, I can't remember during which act, I was like, let's see, Guy Fawkes, and it's like exploding the Houses of Parliament. I did not think of this. It just kind of felt very, I don't know, just the whole plotting thing was very shady. Plots tend to be. It just kind of, I don't know, it feels very vivid and much more conversational than Cleopatra's one. I think because... probably because there was it was higher form and more elevated language back then, or I don't know, just the way, like the differences in the way he writes. I don't know, But yeah, it's just I want to see. I'm sad I'm not going to be here on Thursday to see the rest of it because I want to know what happens, and just because Thais is very sort of I don't know. I can imagine it like as set in like sort of Mean Girls universe, but as a grown up, which is kind of scary considering how much power she wields to, get this poor girl tortured, and possibly killed. I don't know if she dies, but that's a spoiler for you to know and me to find out. Yeah, it just I don't know. This play is doing so many things.
Yeah, and just on the differences between this and Cleopatra, I mean, we've got to remember we've read one version of Daniel's Cleopatra. There is a slightly different version that we will come to, as well as, of course, we'll do a second look definitely on Cleopatra because it's very much fitting in with things. I think the difference between those two versions is one is perhaps more to the original brief and the other is more to Samuel Daniel's taste. And we haven't done the one that is more to Samuel Daniel's taste. I think that's the way around we did it. So we may find that the other version has a few slightly more theatrical flourishes to it. But may not. I could be wrong on that point. But that's just what's in the back of my mind as I'm thinking these things. Rachael, any final thoughts? I thought you were going to say no for a second there. I was just going, no, I'm good.
I like it. There's a lot. Everybody's already said it. It's like it's conversational. I'm already partial to Samuel Daniel because of Cleopatra. I don't know. It's good. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I can see a production of it. I'm seeing this. It's not like some of the other neoclassical works that we've looked at, Inns of Court things and stuff more publicationally wise, where I'm sitting there going, okay, I need to cut this and smash this together, or do this, or do something quite aggressive with the text. Whereas this, I'm thinking, well, okay, maybe make some cuts and maybe clarify a few things, but on the whole, it works quite nicely and it feels very scalable. And I like things that are nicely scalable. So, and again, it's fitting in with other texts that we're doing. I'm sort of making a note that we really need to do a sort of extended Alexander the Great universe. Because actually we've got increasingly enough plays to start saying, well, we've got an Alexander the Great season that we could actually pull together. We've got Darius. We've got two versions of Darius. I think there's one version we wouldn't do in association with this. But we've got one which does tie in quite nicely with this. And there is the suggestion that actually Samuel Daniel had read that version. There is that possibility. So there may be influences from the Tragedy of Darius by William Alexander. Though, of course, there might not. It might just be a coincidence because it's the same bit of history. So it could just be one of those things. Any other final thoughts anyone wants to throw in before we close the session? No? Okay. Well, it's gone down well. We will conclude this shortly as we look at Act 4 and 5 as we find out how well it's all going to go. But all that remains, thank all the wonderful readers for their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Brabble of two wanton youths.